Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to my channel. Let me ask you something intimate. Have you ever been lying awake at night wondering why her? Why him? Why did she choose that man, not me? Maybe it was the quiet confidence he carried in his eyes. Maybe it was the way he listened without interrupting. Or maybe it wasn't any of that. Maybe it was something far more subtle, something almost invisible yet deeply powerful. You see, attraction is rarely about loud declarations. It's about presence. It's about what is unspoken. Women don't fall for what you say. They fall for how you make them feel in silence. And in that space, the ancient wisdom of Stoicism has quietly shaped some of the most desirable, grounded men in history. In a world filled with noise, we forget that stillness is a language. A man who doesn't chase, doesn't brag, doesn't react, but instead observes, reflects, and responds with grace, that man holds gravity, and gravity pulls. Today, we're going to explore the hidden psychology behind why women choose the men they do, and how the Stoic way, not the flashy one, quietly wins hearts. So take a deep breath, because what you're about to hear might not just change how you understand women, it might change how you see yourself. You know, one of the most fascinating things about love is that we rarely choose it with logic. We think we do. We make lists, we set standards, we have types. But love, true desire, partnership, it often sneaks in through the side door. And women, perhaps more than anyone, are attuned to this subtle art of feeling. They're not only listening to your words, they're listening to the space between them. They're watching who you are when no one is clapping, who you are when life isn't performing for you. So let's imagine this. A woman walks into a room. She scans the space, not consciously, not calculating, but sensing. One man is talking loudly about his job, his achievements, his adventures. He's animated, magnetic even. Another man is quietly present, perhaps sipping his drink, maybe smiling when others speak. He doesn't need the spotlight. He is the spotlight. And here's where it begins. The psychology behind why women choose certain men. It's not always about appearance, status, or charm. It's about how a man regulates his inner world. Because when a woman feels that your center is grounded, she instinctively believes she'll be safe in your presence. And safety, real emotional safety, not the absence of danger, but the presence of peace, is the root of attraction. Stoicism, you see, isn't about being cold or detached. It's not the absence of emotion, it's the mastery of it. A Stoic man doesn't suppress what he feels. He understands it, observes it, but he doesn't become it. That, in today's emotionally frantic world, is rare. And rare, my dear listener, is irresistible. Women are not drawn to chaos. They are drawn to clarity. They are drawn to a man who knows who he is even when the world doesn't validate it. They are drawn to restraint, not the kind that withholds love, but the kind that holds back impulse. Because impulse is easy. Presence is powerful. Now think about your relationships. Have you ever tried to impress a woman by being the loudest, the funniest, the most agreeable? Did you find yourself exhausted, unseen, maybe even resentful? That's because trying to be chosen is a completely different energy from being a man who is worthy of choosing. The first makes you chase. The second makes you attract. One of the most misunderstood truths in male psychology is that women do not fall for what you do for them. They fall for how they feel about themselves when they're around you. Do they feel seen, but not suffocated? Do they feel intrigued, but not manipulated? Do they feel safe, not because you're controlling, but because you're consistent? Consistency. A man who is not moved by every gust of emotion, every twist in the conversation. A man who knows that discomfort is not the end of a relationship, but often the beginning of depth. This man, this Stoic, becomes a mirror. He reflects calm in chaos. He speaks with intention. He waits before reacting. And in doing so, he builds trust. And trust is the soil in which attraction grows roots. Let's go deeper. A woman who is emotionally mature does not want to be entertained. She wants to be held, not physically, though that too, but emotionally. Held in space, held in thought, held in your attention. And if your attention is scattered, always distracted, jumping from one reaction to the next, she can't land with you. She floats around you unsure. She's drawn in, but never grounded. And slowly, she lets go. Now, there's a reason women are attracted to older men. It's not always about age. It's about emotional maturity. It's about the energy of a man who has been through things and no longer needs to prove himself. A man who can sit with silence and not fill it. A man who can hear a complaint and not defend himself immediately. A man who knows that validation is not weakness, that reassurance is not submission, that listening is not losing. And let's be honest, most men were never taught this. They were taught to perform, to provide, to fix, but rarely were they taught to witness. And witnessing is the gateway to intimacy. To truly see a woman, not just admire her, not just desire her, but to witness her in her full complexity, without needing to solve or simplify her. That is the essence of being chosen. Because women, whether they say it or not, are always sensing, can I be all of me around you? And your response to her moods, her dreams, her insecurities tells her everything. If you try to fix her, she knows you don't yet understand her. If you minimize her, she knows you can't hold her. But if you stay, if you breathe, if you simply say, I hear you and mean it, she opens. This is what the Stoics knew. That power is not in control, it's in presence. That the strongest man is not the one who speaks the most, but the one who listens without losing himself. And women, they choose men who make them feel emotionally rich, not confused, not reactive, not afraid, but rich in experience, in depth, in attention. So if you've been wondering why you're not being chosen, maybe ask yourself this: are you leading with performance, or are you leading with presence? Because the Stoic man doesn't need to be the loudest in the room. He becomes the one she seeks out when she's tired of the noise. He's not the thrill of the moment. He's the memory that lingers. And when she finds him, she often realizes, this is the man I didn't even know I needed. And so we begin this journey, not just into how women choose, but into how you become the kind of man who is worth choosing. You see, when we strip away the distractions, status, appearance, ambition, what remains is the core of who you are. And that's what she's choosing. That's what she's trusting. Not the suit, not the speech, not even your romantic gestures, but the consistency of your essence, the reliability of your internal world, that sacred steadiness that says, you can lean on me, and I won't collapse. Women often walk through the world with their antennas raised. They are feeling into every interaction. They sense tension before words reveal it. They know when your smile doesn't match your energy. And this is where so many men become confused, because they're saying the right things, but something still feels off. Why? Because women don't only hear your voice, they feel your vibe. And the Stoic man, the grounded man, is not afraid to let his truth show. He doesn't wear masks. He doesn't perform emotional tricks. He doesn't run from discomfort, his or hers. He meets it with quiet dignity. That stillness, that emotional containment, not repression but reflection, is magnetic. Now, this doesn't mean you become passive or withdrawn. Quite the opposite. You become responsive, not reactive. You learn to listen beyond words. When she's angry, you don't immediately try to calm her down. You stay, you see her. When she's joyful, you don't rush to match her excitement. You hold space for it. You let her be fully expressed without trying to shape her energy to fit your comfort zone. And in doing so, something sacred happens. She begins to trust you not just with her time, but with her truth. Have you ever noticed that the men women open up to most are not always the flashiest or the most physically imposing? They are the ones who make her feel seen without being watched, heard without being studied. They are not constantly trying to impress. They're simply there, present, accepting, intentional. This is the essence of emotional containment. It's the quiet knowing that your energy won't overwhelm hers, won't compete with hers, won't collapse in front of hers. That kind of masculine stability is something no dating app can measure, no selfie can capture. But every woman who values her own depth is searching for it. So let me ask you this: when was the last time you allowed yourself to be fully present with a woman, not to win her, not to seduce her, but simply to witness her? Because when you stop trying to be chosen, you start to choose yourself. And that self-choosing energy, that's what turns heads. That's what changes the temperature in a room when you walk in. That's what says, I am not here to chase. I am here to connect. Let's go deeper now. One of the most beautiful things about Stoicism is its reverence for self-mastery. The understanding that true strength lies not in dominance, but in discipline. That your thoughts are not your identity. That your impulses are not your commands. A woman feels this deeply. She notices how you handle rejection. Are you defensive? Are you spiteful? Or do you hold your center and move forward with grace? She sees how you respond to success. Do you boast? Do you flaunt? Or do you stay humble, quietly aware that achievements are fleeting, but integrity endures? A man who lives by values rather than validation, that man is profoundly attractive, because he cannot be manipulated, he cannot be pulled out of himself. And a woman senses this. She may test you, not to break you, but to feel you. To feel your strength, not your superiority. Your steadiness, not your stubbornness. Here's something you may not have heard before. Women are not testing your patience. They're testing your presence. They want to know, are you really here? Or are you in your ego? Are you building a life? Or are you building an image? And that is where so many men get it wrong. They think women want a man who always has the answer. But what women truly crave is a man who's not afraid of her questions, a man who doesn't run from her complexity, a man who stays when the conversation gets uncomfortable, when the emotions rise, when the story is messy. Because being chosen by a woman is not about being perfect. It's about being present enough to witness her imperfectly and to love her through it, to not just be there for the best version of her, but to stand beside her even when she forgets who she is. So what makes a woman choose one man over another? It's not luck, it's not looks, it's not just chemistry, it's how that man holds himself. Because if you can't hold yourself, how will she believe you can hold her? Let's bring this into the body. Have you ever been in a conversation where a woman is pouring her heart out and you find yourself tensing, trying to say something profound? That's the moment. That's the test. Can you resist the urge to do and instead choose to simply be? Can you sit in the discomfort of not having a solution and still offer your presence? That silence, that stillness, that gentle eye contact, it is more intimate than any advice. And when she senses that you are not here to fix her, not here to mold her, but here to simply be with her, that's when her guard begins to fall. That's when trust replaces fear. That's when connection replaces confusion. And yet, so many men struggle with this. Because being present requires vulnerability. It requires you to slow down, to stop performing, to stop hiding behind humor or success or logic, to simply let yourself feel and still stay rooted. Stoicism is not an armor. It is not about being unaffected. It is about learning to be deeply affected and yet not undone. And that is what women are drawn to. They're not looking for a man who's never been broken. They're looking for a man who knows how to gather himself back together. Who has felt loss, disappointment, failure, and didn't collapse, didn't blame, but grew? Because when you grow from your pain rather than project it, you become a man who is safe to love. Not because you're soft, but because you're stable. Not because you're quiet, but because your silence holds wisdom. So if you're listening to this and wondering, how do I become that man? Start by being honest with yourself. When you feel triggered, pause. When you feel angry, breathe. When you feel dismissed, don't retaliate, reflect. The Stoic man is not emotionless. He is emotionally literate, and that literacy becomes his leadership. He leads not with volume, but with vision. Not with rules, but with resonance. And that is the kind of man a woman doesn't just choose, she cherishes. There's something sacred about a man who doesn't need to announce his worth. A man who can walk into a room and not demand attention, yet somehow all eyes find him. It's not about his looks, it's about his energy. His presence is permission. Permission for others to feel safe, to be real, to exhale. This is the man women are drawn to when they're ready to stop performing, when they're tired of playing small or pretending to be someone else just to keep peace, when they long to be met by someone who doesn't just tolerate their fullness but invites it. And that kind of man is not the one who talks the most about women. It's not the one constantly seeking the next conquest or proving his masculinity by the number of hearts he breaks. It's the one who respects the feminine, not because he wants to win it, but because he understands it. And understanding a woman isn't about decoding her. It's not a puzzle to solve. It's a rhythm to dance with. It's realizing that sometimes she doesn't need clarity. She needs companionship in her confusion. Sometimes she doesn't need answers. She needs assurance that she's not alone in the asking. And this is where the Stoic man shines. He doesn't shrink from complexity. He doesn't need things to be black and white. He can sit in the gray, breathe in the uncertainty, and still hold a calm, steady heart. And for a woman navigating a world that often demands her to dim her feelings, this man becomes her sanctuary. Do you realize how rare that is? When a woman feels she can be fully emotional around you, messy, loud, quiet, uncertain, and you don't flinch, don't flee, don't try to silence her, she begins to relax into you, not in fear, but in freedom. And that's when she begins to choose, not the performance, not the story, but the man, the one who sees her, not through a lens of who she should be, but through the truth of who she already is. Now here's the thing, most men miss. Emotional intimacy isn't built by big, romantic gestures. It's built in the micro moments. When you remember how she takes her coffee, when you ask about the things she thought you'd forgotten, when you show up on time, when you follow through, when you listen, not to respond, but to understand. These small moments are the proof points. They say, I'm not here for a performance. I'm here for you. And when a woman feels that, she softens, she opens, she chooses. And here's where the Stoic man's discipline becomes his greatest gift, not just to himself, but to the woman he loves. Because discipline isn't about control. It's about honor. It's about choosing the right thing, even when it's not the easy thing. It's about staying grounded, even when your emotions pull at your throat and your pride begs to speak first. She watches how you handle your anger. Not if you get angry. We all do, but how? Do you lash out or do you step away and breathe? Do you blame or do you own your reaction? Because the man who owns himself, that's the man she trusts with her most vulnerable parts. Let's not pretend that every woman is looking for a Stoic man. Some want excitement, danger, unpredictability. But those aren't the ones you build a life with. Those aren't the ones you find peace with at 3 a.m. when the world feels too loud. The woman who has done her own work, who values emotional intimacy, who longs for depth, she is looking for the man who isn't afraid to sit with silence, who can say, I don't have all the answers, but I'm here, who can see her without needing to fix her, and who values himself enough to not settle for shallow connection. Now maybe you're thinking, this all sounds beautiful, but how do I become that man? The answer isn't in learning tricks or lines. It's in undoing the parts of yourself that were taught to hustle for love. The parts that were told emotions are weakness, the parts that were punished for sensitivity or ignored for vulnerability. Becoming this kind of man is a returning not a reaching. It's remembering that you don't have to perform to be loved. You have to be present. And presence starts with being honest with yourself. It starts with asking, am I showing up as who I really am, or who I think I need to be to get approval? Because when you drop the performance, when you stop trying to be the man she wants and start being the man you are, a man who is rooted, responsible, reflective, that's when alignment happens. She's not looking for perfect. She's looking for real. And real is raw. Real is sometimes quiet. Real is saying, I'm not okay today, and trusting that your worth doesn't diminish in her eyes because of it. In fact, it often increases. Because women aren't attracted to men who hide their truth. They're attracted to men who hold their truth with dignity, who say, this is me. I'm not afraid of what I feel. And I won't be afraid of what you feel either. That, my dear listener, is masculine leadership, not dominance, not control, but emotional leadership. The ability to make space for feelings without becoming consumed by them. That is the man she chooses when she's done playing games, when she's done being reduced, when she's ready to build something real. And when she does choose you, not because you chased her, but because your energy called to her, something powerful unfolds. The relationship becomes less about strategy and more about synergy, less about manipulation and more about mutuality, less about convincing and more about connection. Because she's not just choosing your body. She's not just choosing your resume. She's choosing your spirit, your presence. The way your energy makes her feel when the world is falling apart and you're still standing tall. So don't rush this process. Don't ask how to get the girl. Ask how to become the man who no longer doubts that he is the prize. Because when a stoic man meets a woman who has done her own work, there's no performance. There's no drama. There's just a quiet, radiant knowing that what you both have found is rare and worth protecting. There's a moment, subtle, almost imperceptible, when a woman realizes that she no longer has to fight for emotional space, that she's not being rushed to explain herself, to justify her feelings, to package her emotional truth into something more digestible. That moment, when it happens, creates a kind of trust that most men underestimate. And it is always created by the presence of a man who does not flinch in the face of emotional depth. This man doesn't need to defend against her storm. He becomes the ground beneath it, not to tame it, not to stop it, but to remind her that she can express herself fully and still be safe. And that safety is not built on silence or submission. It's built on his ability to remain, to stay steady, even when her voice trembles or her eyes grow fierce with truth. A stoic man knows that emotions are not enemies. They are visitors. Some stay longer than others. Some knock down doors. But none are meant to rule us. And so when a woman cries in front of him, he doesn't panic. He breathes. He holds her gaze. He lets her know with his body, his eyes, his stillness, you don't scare me. I'm not going anywhere. Do you know what that does to a woman who's had to be her own rock her whole life? It disarms her. It unwinds the armor she's been wearing. It invites her back to herself. And it tells her that this man, this one, might be the home she never believed she could have. Because emotional safety isn't about always being calm. It's about knowing that when things aren't calm, you'll stay honest. You won't shut down. You won't withdraw affection as punishment. You won't weaponize her vulnerability. You'll sit with it side by side until clarity returns. And here's something even more important. The stoic man also expects this in return, because a man who is grounded in his values does not trade peace for proximity. He doesn't tolerate chaos just to keep someone around. He knows that his inner world is sacred, and he won't invite anyone into it who treats his emotional discipline like coldness, or who confuses his stillness for apathy. He wants connection, but not any connection. He wants truth, alignment, reciprocity. A woman who honors herself enough to speak with clarity, not games. Who meets his depth with her own, who doesn't run when things feel real, but leans in with curiosity. And that mutual depth, that's where something transcendent happens. Because now you're not just choosing each other, you're building together, not just attraction, not just romance, but emotional intimacy, a bond rooted in truth, respect, and shared vision. It's not glamorous. It doesn't look like a highlight reel, but it feels like exhaling. It feels like being known without having to explain yourself. You see, women choose men for many reasons, but they stay for one: how they feel when they are around you. Do they feel judged or embraced, rushed or received, minimized or magnified? A stoic man makes you feel seen, not because he says all the right things, but because his energy is clear, it's quiet, it's focused. He doesn't compete for dominance. He doesn't chase validation. He simply shows up and stays present. And presence true. Embodied presence is erotic, it's spiritual, it's profoundly rare. In a culture addicted to stimulation and distraction, presence feels like rebellion. And women, especially the ones who are tired of being strong all the time, are starving for a presence that doesn't ask them to shrink or earn or prove. So if you are that man or becoming that man, hear me clearly, you are needed, not because you're perfect, but because you offer something the world is too noisy to teach: quiet strength, A strength that listens more than it talks, that forgives without forgetting boundaries, that responds instead of reacts, that can sit beside pain and not try to rush it away. But make no mistake, this doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean being walked over. A stoic man has standards. He speaks up. He says no without guilt. He communicates his needs not through anger, but through clarity. He knows that his time, his body, his energy, they are precious. Not everyone gets access. Not everyone deserves a seat at the table of his life. And because he respects himself, he becomes deeply respected by others, especially women who value emotional leadership. Have you ever noticed that the more you chase, the more she pulls away? That's because neediness feels heavy. But clarity, that's light, that's magnetic. Clarity says, I want you, but I don't need you to validate me. And that message, that confidence, it creates space for a woman to come toward you voluntarily, not out of fear or guilt or obligation, but because she wants to, because you've created a space she longs to enter. So stop asking what she wants. Start asking if you're living in a way that reflects your highest self. Because women don't choose based on perfection. They choose based on energy, based on the emotional atmosphere you bring into a room, based on how safe they feel to be themselves when they're near you. And safety, my friend, is not created through bravado. It's not created by control. It's created by truthful consistency. Who are you when no one's watching, when you don't get what you want, when you're misunderstood? That version of you, the one that still shows up with integrity, even when it's hard, that is the man she chooses. So if you've been lost in the noise of advice and tactics and tips, come back to this. Who am I becoming? Not for her, for me. Because when you become a man of presence, of principle, of patience, you don't have to chase, you don't have to convince, you don't even have to talk that much. You are the message. What stays with a woman long after the moment has passed isn't what you did. It's how she felt when you were there. It's the memory of being met, not impressed. The warmth of your gaze when she felt uncertain. The strength in your silence when her words were tangled in emotion. The way you didn't try to take her storm away, you simply didn't abandon her in it. That's why she chooses you. Not because you fit some checklist. Not because you checked every box of perfection, but because your presence reminded her of home. A home where her femininity could breathe, where her complexity was welcome, where her softness wasn't seen as weakness, and her strength didn't have to compete. You didn't rescue her. You didn't chase her. You saw her. And the truth is, every woman has longed to be seen that way. Not through the lens of desire alone, not for what she gives or how she looks, but as a full being, with a past, a future, and a soul that wants to be touched. Not just held, but this journey hasn't only been about understanding her, it's been about rediscovering you. Because a stoic man doesn't simply attract women, he attracts alignment. He's not searching for validation, he is grounded in value. He no longer asks, why won't she choose me? Instead, he quietly lives the answer, because I choose myself. And in that choosing, in that calm and consistent self-honor, the right woman recognizes him, not all at once, not in a dramatic moment, but slowly, intuitively, deeply. She notices how he respects his time, how he doesn't bend just to be liked, how he doesn't fear her independence, but celebrates it. She sees the way he doesn't flinch when she's vulnerable, how he stays present when her tears fall, and doesn't shame her for being human. She feels how his touch is not greedy, but generous. How his love is not earned, it's offered. How he doesn't try to own her, he tries to understand her. And in doing so, he gives her what she's been starving for: space. Space to feel, space to express, space to become. And so she chooses, not because he asked her to, not because he begged or convinced or pursued endlessly. She chooses because she sees something in him that makes her feel more like herself. That's the paradox, isn't it? Women don't choose the man who completes them. They choose the man who awakens them, who reflects them back to themselves, who lets them unfold without resistance or redesign. And when you become that man, not perfectly, but intentionally, your energy begins to change. Your eyes carry stillness. Your words hold weight. Your presence becomes more valuable than your performance. That's what Stoicism offers. Not detachment, but devotion to what matters. Not coldness, but calm. Not silence as a wall, but silence as a way of listening so deeply that words become unnecessary. You begin to show up differently in conversations. You don't need to win debates. You need to understand perspectives. You don't need to dominate. You need to discern. You don't need to be alpha. You need to be authentic. And from that place, your relationships change, not just romantic ones. Friendships deepen. Conflicts soften. People begin to sense that you're a man who carries weight, not in your shoulders, but in your presence. Not because you're loud, but because you're here, fully, intentionally, quietly powerful. That's what makes you unforgettable. That's why she can't stop thinking about you. Not because of what you said, but because of who you were when she needed someone real. And now, I want to speak to the part of you that's still unsure, that's still healing, that still doubts whether you're truly worthy of being chosen, not for your accomplishments, but for your essence. I want to tell you, you don't have to do more. You don't have to be more. You have to be you, without apology, without pretense, without the need to be anyone else. The woman who is truly aligned with you will not be impressed by your highlight reel. She will be moved by your presence when things aren't perfect. She will be drawn to the steadiness in your spirit, to the clarity in your no, to the honesty in your lies, to the way you live in alignment even when no one's watching. That kind of man, he is chosen, not for the moment, for the journey. Because women do not fall in love with your achievements. They fall in love with the man who achieves emotional security, the one who is not perfect, but who is present, who doesn't flinch when intimacy gets real, who doesn't run when feelings get big, who doesn't shrink when things get quiet. So as we end this conversation, I invite you not to perform, but to embody, not to chase, but to cultivate. Not to strive, but to become. Become the man who holds space, who speaks with clarity, who listens without losing himself, who walks with grace and strength side by side, who doesn't fear rejection because he knows that his worth is not on trial. This is what she's waiting for. A man who doesn't need to be the storm because he's already mastered the sky. So breathe deep, stand tall. You are no longer trying to be chosen. You are choosing yourself. And in that choice, she will recognize you.